Hello students. Now in this particular video we will speak about a very important lesson, print culture and the modern world. As the lesson is very big, we have divided this lesson into two parts. We will discuss here part first. This lesson has the following section. As you can see, the first is the first printed books. Next, the print comes to Europe. Then the print revolution and its impact. The reading mania. We have covered these four topics in this particular video. Then we have the print and censorship, new forms of publication, religious reforms and public debates, India and the world of prints, and the last topic is the 19th century. The first topic is the first printed books. As we know that the earliest printing technology, it was developed in China and later on it passed to Japan, Korea, as we know that. And this technology was involving the wood block printing. Then we learn about the calligraphy. Calligraphy means the art of beautiful and stylized handwriting. You know calligraphic pens are there. You must have used them. Then why was printing important in the China? That question we are going to see. The real reason is that imperial state of China, it was a major producer. Then the printing continued in China till 17th century also. But the 17th century it was not woodblock printing, but the new technology it was brought by the Europe from the Europe in the China. Then we speak about the Japan, where we can find the Diamond Sutra, which is the oldest today available book in Japan, that is 868 AD. Then we come to the medieval Japan, and we can see the a new urban culture, which was depicted through the uh, pictures called as ukiyo. And Kitagawa Utamaro, he was a very famous painter that time. Now the first question is, why was China a major producer of printed material for a long time? Means even before Europe started printing all that things. The answer, as we know, that China has a huge bureaucratic system. Bureaucracy means what? The people who are working for the government. So today we know MPSC, UPSC, like that system it was there. And for that, the people needed to give some kind of examinations. And these exams today also we know in India, we call them civil services examination. For the civil services examination, we need books. So that is why textbooks needed to be printed in a very large amount, and that is why printing was more important. So if you see in the 16th century, now the population was growing, so that is why more and more candidates were required, and that is why more printed material was appeared in public. Now next question is, how did the uses of print diversify, means changed, in China by the 17th century? Now we are speaking about the medieval China. So by the 17th century, urban culture in the China it bloomed, and that is why more and more people started using the print. Earlier the print was used only by the officials and scholars, but now the print was not only used by scholars and officials, everybody started using that. The merchants, they started using the print in everyday life because they wanted to collect the trade information, and they started printing about that. The most important thing is that reading became the leisure activity. Today we have now internet, mobile, everything, but that time it was not there. So that is why people used to read more. And what they used to read? Narratives, means stories, then poetry, autobiographies, then anthologies, means suppose there is a very big book and you read a small amount of portion about that book, means the information of book is given in the short, such kind of things are there. Then rich women, they started reading. Now they started writing poetry. You can't only write, you want to publish them. So they started writing, means publishing poetry and plays. And even the lives of the scholar officials, it was published. And courtesans, means the people who are working in the court, they also started writing about their lives. So that is the answer for this. Next question is, describe the progress of print in Japan. As we have already seen, China printing technology developed and it got transferred to Japan. So that is why Japan was printing right from 768 770 AD. And the first book, that is Diamond Sutra, which is available, it was printed in 868. It was about the Buddhist teaching there, and it was having around 6 sheets, and you can see the picture here, which is given. Then what kind of other things? The pictures were printed on textiles, means cloth. They were playing cards and paper money. And poets and prose writers. Now, prose writers means the people who are writing like essays and all those things. So they were writing and publishing. So that is why books were published in large numbers. Then the Edo, today we call it as Tokyo. There were various illustrated collections of artists. It was printed and published. So what was there? The books on women, the musical instruments, calculations, tea ceremony. In Japanese, we know that tea ceremony is a very, very important actually event there. Then flower arrangements, proper etiquettes for cooking, and various famous places. So they were getting printed. As we know that in Japan, such kind of art form was called as ukiyo, or it is also known as the pictures of floating world. And Kitagawa Utamaro is a very important person for that. And here in this picture, you can see the example of ukiyo. Second section of the lesson is print comes to Europe. In this lesson or in this part, we learn that how the Italian traveler whose name was Marco Polo, he carried the art and technology of printing from China to Europe, means he was Italian, in 12th century. And then a German, that is Johann Gutenberg, how he developed the printing press and how he printed the first book on his own printing press, that is called as Bible, where he actually published around 180 copies. So here you can see the Gutenberg's printing press, as well as you can see the first Bible. From that, some page is there which is displayed here. Now the question is, how did print comes to Europe from China? Explain. As we know from the Silk Route, Chinese paper already had reached Europe in the 11th century itself. So the Europeans used to use this paper for writing, and there were some scribes. Scribes are the people who are expert in writing something. So they used to write on the paper and they used to prepare the manuscripts. Then 1295 we know that the Marco Polo, the great explorer who stayed in the China almost for 12 years, he came back, and while coming back he brought the wood block printing with him, and this printing got spread in Italy. So first Italians started producing books using the woodblock printing, and soon all this technology it spread to the all other parts of Europe. But if you look in the Europe, what was happening? The luxury editions means for the very rich people, whatever writing was done, it was done on vellum. Now vellum is the animal parchment or skin, and the rich aristocratic noble people they used to read from this, and they used to regard the printed books as very cheap vulgarities. But the merchants, students who were needing such kind of books to read, so they started using printed books. Next, many a times you get this question about the Johann Gutenberg, as write a short note on Johann Gutenberg or give a short sketch of Johann Gutenberg. So you need to write them. Now, Johann Gutenberg, he was born in the town of Strasbourg, which is now in Germany. He was the son of merchant and he used to live on a very large industry agricultural estate. So when he was very young, means adolescent, so that time only he learned how to polish the precious stones. And soon he became a very skilled goldsmith as he grew up. Then he made some lead molds, and all these techniques which he learned in his earlier life, he used in the developing the printing press. He used the lead molds to cast the letters of the alphabet into metal types. Then when he made this uh, press, that time it actually completely revolutionized the spread of books in the Europe. So the first book he printed it was the Bible, and it took almost 3 years to print 180 copies. And thus we can see there was a complete what I can say transformation from handmade prints to the machine-made printing. So thus he is known as the pioneer of printing technology all over the world. Next question is, there was clearly a great need for even quicker and cheaper reproduction of text in the Europe. Justify the statement. Or we can ask this question in this way. How was the increased demand for books fulfilled by the booksellers? Mention any 3 points. So first of all, as the demand for books increased, what booksellers did? They started exporting books to all parts of Europe. Then they started organizing book fairs at various places. And that is why the production of manuscripts, it was organized in the new ways because the demand was expanding. The skilled writers or scribes, earlier they were employed only by the wealthy and influential people, but now booksellers also started employing them for themselves. So for one bookseller we can see nearly 40 to 50 scribes used to work. But what was happening? The demand was so huge that the production of these such quality manuscripts, even they could not satisfy the demand. So that is why, as we know, the woodblock printing, it was a kind of boon for these printers. They started printing on textiles, playing cards, and they started printing religious pictures with simple and brief text. This way you can write the answer of these questions. This can be asked for either 3 marks or 5 marks. Now the next question is, explain the main features of first printed Bible. Now we have already learned that the Gutenberg, he developed his printing press and he initially printed 180 copies. For that he required 3 years to complete them. Now here he only printed those, but the borders which were there, they were carefully designed, painted and illuminated by hand by the artist. So that is why we can say that no two copies were same. Every page of each copy was different, and this was done by the hand by the people who were called as artists there. The color was used within the letters in various places. This had two functions. It added color to the page and highlighted all the holy words to emphasize their significance. Now how I am highlighting like that. And color on every page was added by the hand. So thus Gutenberg printed the text in black, leaving spaces where color could be filled later on. So this is the answer of this question. So this question can be also asked for either for 3 marks or 5 marks. Third section of the topic is the print revolution and its impact. And on this topic many questions are asked because we can learn about the new reading public in the Europe which emerged there. Then there was, we can say, fear of print because of the religious debates, and there was print and dissent. We can see that what will be there, and we will learn all the questions about this. Now this is the common question which is asked: how did printing press brought changes in the reading culture, or what was the impact of print revolution? And it can be asked in another way: how did the printing press create a new reading public? Explain. The answer of this question, we will say that how print has affected various walks of life. First of all, as we know, the print, it reduced the cost of books. It was earlier laborious task, very costly task, but now the printing made the books very cheap. Because of that time and labor, it came down. And because of that, we can see multiple copies could be printed in a very short time. So books flooded the market. And because of the availability of books, we can say readership increased. And it gave rise to a new culture. And we call that as a new culture for reading. Now earlier the common people could not read books. Only the elite means very high class people used to read them. So that is why now common people also started reading. Earlier what they used to do, they used to hear a story or they used to see the performance. But now hearing public was now getting converted into reading public. Then the rate of literacy earlier it was very low, around 20 to 30%. But because of the flurry of books, the rate of literacy also started going high. Then publishers started reaching out to the public. First of all, they knew that the people were not knowing the reading. So that is why they made people to listen books. They published the popular ballads and folk tales. Ballads means in Marathi how we can call pavadas and all that. And profusely illustrated means there were many pictures in that. So these kind of things they were taken by some people and they sung there. They were recited. So whenever there's some public gatherings like taverns means a kind of small bar in towns. Then oral culture thus entered into the print and printed material was orally transmitted. So thus we can see the hearing and reading both public they became one, and that is how the print revolution started reaching the every what I can say new corner of the society. Now printing became popular, but it is not that everyone welcomed it. So there is the next question: why did everybody not welcome the printing? Yes, not everyone welcomed the printed book, and many people had some doubts and fears about it. That now what some people thought, they were apprehensive that the effects of the easier access to the printed word and wider circulation may affect the people's mind. Then they thought that there will not be any kind of control over the printed and read material, and it can spread the rebellious, and irreligious thoughts. Then, if that happened, the authority of valuable literature, valuable means generally church, they used to say that. So, expressed by the religious authorities and monarchs, as well as the many writers and artists, the anxiety was the basis of widespread criticism of the new printed literature that had become that had begun to circulate. Now we can uh, actually compare it with today's internet. Today we can say that internet is not liked by everybody because some of they say that because of internet many people have started learning wrong things. So earlier it was for print, now today it is for internet. Next question is that explain the role played by print in bringing about a division in the Roman Catholic Church. Now, in Christianity, as we know, there are two main important sects. One is Catholic and second are Protestant. Now, why Protestant sect is created? That is the reason we are going to discuss here. There was a religious reformer whose name was Martin Luther in Germany, and he wrote about a 95 thesis criticizing the many practices and rituals in the Roman Catholic Church. He was a priest and he knew that what kind of wrong things were happening in the church, and he wrote about them. And what did he do? He wrote and he printed that, and he printed and posted that on the church door in the Wittenberg. And he challenged the church to debate what he has written. But people liked that, and it was reproduced in the vast numbers and it was read widely. And somehow it led to a division within the church, and a new kind of sect in the Christianity was born. It was called as Protestant. He wrote a new Bible. Of that, nearly 5,000 copies were sold in the first week itself, and immediately the second edition started. So, whatever he wrote, the scholars believe that it brought about a new intellectual atmosphere, and ideas of reformation they were spread very widely and rapidly in the Europe. And that is why Luther he was very much grateful to the print, and he said that printing is the ultimate gift of God and the greatest one. Next question is explain the dissent. Dissent means problem, anger associated with the print, giving some examples. Print and popular religious literature that time, it stimulated many interpretations where some individuals started reading something and tried to interpret means they started giving their own actually kind of thoughts on some kind of literature. So there was a miller whose name was Manosio in Italy. He started reading books, and what did he do? He read Bible, and on the basis of Bible he saw what the church was doing, and he formulated his own view of God and creation, and that made the Roman Catholic Church very much angry. Then they started Inquisition. Now, what is Inquisition? Inquisition, if you go by the definition, it is the organization formed by the Roman Catholic Church to find and punish people who did not agree with its beliefs, especially from 15th to 17th century. So this Manocchio was called twice. He was given proper warnings, but he did not listen. That is why finally he was executed. So Roman Church, it was a lot of trouble by all such kind of popular readings and the questions which were asked to them. So that is why they decided to impose severe controls over the publishers and booksellers. And they started to maintain an index of the prohibited. Prohibited means the books which are not legally acceptable from 1558. So this was the impact of impact of print on the church. The next section in the chapter is the reading mania. Now, mania means literally madness. How people became mad to read something. Today we know that today also there is a mania, but we can call it as a internet or social media mania. So here in this particular lesson topic, we will learn about how the reading became very much popular in the various parts of Europe, and some of the writers or authors, they were completely convinced that books will change the world. It will bring progress and it will bring the enlightenment. And last year we have learned about the French Revolution. So many historians now, they say that the French Revolution would not have become possible without the invention and the development in the print technology. That we are going to see in this particular topic here. The first question is that explain the reason for virtual reading mania in Europe in 17th and 18th century. Now we have learned in the chapter that in this particular centuries the literacy rate went very high. And what was the reason? The churches and their denominations, they started setting up schools in the various parts of the Europe. Now what is a denomination? It is one of the different religious groups that you can belong to. And that is how the literacy now reached peasants and artisans. Earlier we know that only the elite class it was reading something or it was becoming literate. By the end of 18th century we say that 60 to 80% Europe it became literate. And when people are knowing how to read and write, they want to read the books. And that is why people wanted more and more books, and printers, they started printing and producing various books on various topics. Next question we are going to see which are the topics. Now, what was a new type of literature that appeared in around 17th century? As we have seen in the last question, the literacy rate rose to 60 to 80%, and people wanted now to read more, and a new kind of readership it was created. And what kind of things they wanted to read, or they got to read? Almanacs means in we call in Hindi or Marathi Panchang. Then calendars, ballads. Ballads mean the stories of the heroes. Then folk tales, and in England, what happened? The cheap penny chapbooks they were there, which were very cost efficient, and even in France, the low price books which were printed on very poor quality of paper. So paper people did not matter; they wanted to read something, and these books were called as bibliothèque blue. Now they wanted to read romances, they wanted to read the histories, and as well as the information on various subjects like wars, trade, new developments, means like in science and everything. So people wanted to read on various and different subjects, and printers catered the needs of readers, and they started printing such kind of literature on various topics. In relation with the last question, now new question is there. How did the ideas about science, reason and rationality find their way into popular literature in the 18th century of Europe? Or it can be asked, explain the significance of newspapers and journals developed in the early 18th century. Now, as we know that the printing was on the rise, and various printers they started printing about the current affairs as well as the entertainment. And newspaper played a very important and key role in this. So they started printing the news of developments in other places. Now the philosophers which were writing, their now literature it was made available to the common people. Then ancient and medieval scientific texts which were not known to the public, now they were compiled, means brought together and published. Then maps, scientific diagrams, everything was getting widely printed. Even if we can say that the scientists like Isaac Newton, he started publishing his discoveries or inventions, we can say, and which influenced a much wider circle of scientifically minded readers. Then there were thinkers like Thomas Paine, Voltaire. Last year we have seen Jean-Jacques Rousseau. It was also widely printed and people started reading them. So thus the theories about the science, reason and rationality, it found its way in the popular literature. In the next question, why did some people in the 18th century of Europe, they started thinking that the print culture would bring enlightenment and end despotism? Now what is despotism? It is the exercise of absolute power, especially in a very cruel and oppressive way. So in the 18th century, people started believing that books can bring literally progress and enlightenment. And they thought that the books can change the world. And they thought that the books can actually free the society from the despotism and tyranny. And that is why they said that it will begin a new era of reason and intellect. So there was a novelist whose name was Louis Sebastien Mercier in the France. He declared that the printing press is the most powerful engine of progress, and public opinion was the force that would sweep away the despotism. So what did he do? He wrote novels. In that, what happened? He had some heroes who changed themselves by reading. They became better, more knowledgeable. That is why Mercier proclaimed that tremble, therefore the tyrants of world, tremble before the virtual writer. Means he said that just get afraid of the writer. He is there to change the world. Then, as we have seen the last question, the ideas of the scientists and philosophers, they were now available for the common people. And as we have seen in the last question itself, the Paine, Thomas Paine, Voltaire, Rousseau, the people started reading them widely and they started becoming little more knowledgeable and they started looking at the world through the new eyes. Now, a very important question, we can say that the print culture created the conditions within which the French Revolution occurred. Support the statement giving three arguments. So there were certain thinkers which were called as Enlightenment thinkers, like Voltaire, Rousseau, John Locke. Last year we have seen that. And what did they do? They made a critical commentary. I mean, they started criticizing whatever wrong things were there in the traditions. They started criticizing superstition, and they were completely against the despotism. And because of that, the eyes of the readers they were opened, and they became more critical and rational. And another thing which was very important, that printing created a new culture of dialogue and debate. People now started debating each and every idea. All the values, norms, institutions, they were revalued and discussed by the public. So the people now they became aware about everything and aware of the power of reason. And thus the new ideas of social reformation or revolution, they started coming into existence. Now, by the 1780s, so much literature was there. It started mocking the royalty and criticizes the morality. Here, in this process, it raised questions about existing social order. It led to the hostile sentiments against the monarchy. That time we know that Louis XVI was there. And thus, the print created a culture. It went completely against the current existing system of that states, and that is how we can say that the French Revolution actually started happening on 14th of July 1789 by the fall of Bastille. Next question, write a short note to show that what you know about Erasmus. Means Erasmus was a great Catholic reform of Holland, and it is said that he was the pioneer of reformation in Holland. Holland means today's Netherlands. Now he criticized the Catholicism, means how Protestants were doing under the leadership of Martin Luther. But he did not leave the Catholic sect, he remained there. In his famous books, he criticized the corrupt and immoral life of the Pope and clergymen. But as well as he was quite aware that the printed books can create a lot of negative impact also. So that is why he wrote in 1508. What did he write? Swamps of new books create a glut, and even in good things, satiety is most harmful. Now, glut means unnecessarily supply, more oversupply. So he said that the printers fill the world with books, not just trifling things, but with stupid, ignorant, slanderous, irreligious, and seditious. So he criticized the books. He said that there are certain books which are not at all needed, but printers are printing and readers are reading whatever things they should not read. As some we have seen that reason and rationality, but some readers are going beyond that and they are reading the literature that they should not read. Here we come to the end of part 1 of this particular topic. As we know that this topic is very elaborative. I know this particular video is very much long, but there was no other option because each and every question is very important. Go through it, try to learn. First of all, try to understand and try to write in your own words. Now we will see other sections in the part second of this particular topic. Thank you very much.